I'm pleased to share that we have made some big advances in the ongoing war on dodgy pro-meat science. This week we have secured our second victory. We're 2 months into doing this now, and we're now 2 for 2. You might remember last month when we went after Ty Beale's claim that the US had a lower than average meat consumption. I have to hand it to Ty Beale there. He realised he was mistaken. He issued a correction within 48 hours, and he even tagged my friend Oliver Tahizadeh to thank him for the correction. I've since learned that Ty Beale and his colleagues are going to be issuing a correction to the paper that was cited during this exchange. As I said at the time, I think Ty Beale handled this pretty much as well as somebody can. Things didn't go quite so smoothly with our friends over at the UK's Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board. The AHDB report authors blocked me on LinkedIn when I started to criticise their report. Let's have a look at how that unfolded. The authors of this report I post on LinkedIn know exactly what they're doing, and we need to lose our patience for these cynical tactics. We literally don't have time for this deliberate obfuscation. So it was a pretty bad week for meat industry scientists, especially over on LinkedIn, where I have now been blocked by all of the people associated with this new AHDB report. So since the authors of this AHDB report don't want to talk to me and actually defend it, I'm just going to start exposing some of the ways in which this paper is junk science. Let's take a look at this table in the AHDB report. Now this looks pretty good for meat, right? And pretty good for red meat too. No convincing evidence for an association between red meat and heart disease. Not even probable evidence. It's really only possible that red meat causes heart disease. Really? But here's a weird thing that a friend of mine noticed in this table. The convincing definition is almost identical to the no evidence definition. Well, where is this rating scale from anyway? What is this scale of convincing to no evidence? So they cite it to this 2022 umbrella review. Well, they cite a joint WHO-FAO expert consultation, and the definitions given for probable or convincing evidence in the WHO-FAO expert consultation are completely different. Well, I'm pleased to share that in the end, cooler heads did prevail over at AHDB. After I emailed them to point out the obvious mistake, a different co-author came back to me and recognised the mistake immediately. They've now issued a correction. That's right, they have now taken out the offending table, and they've also backed off the claim that there's no convincing evidence of a link between red meat consumption and heart disease. Of course, that's inaccurate. There is convincing evidence of such a link, so I'm pleased to see that they have now backed off of that claim, and the 175-page report that they were very pleased with is down to 173 pages. Still pretty long. And look, I have to say, fair play to AHDB ultimately, right? The exchange over on LinkedIn did get a little bit spicy. It took them longer than it should have to acknowledge the mistake. But ultimately, they have acknowledged and corrected the mistake that I pointed out, and they've actually even contacted the authors of the paper that they had cited, which made the mistake originally. So we'll see if there's a coming correction to Grosso 2022's umbrella review as well. I have to be honest here, this war on pro-meat science has been way easier than I expected. I mean, seriously, we're 2 months in, and we are 2 paper corrections for 2. And this is something I've been doing in my spare time. This is an indication to me that I should have been being way louder all of the years that I spent quietly annoyed at pro-meat misleading science. If I'd known it was this easy to get papers corrected, I would have started speaking up years ago. But this is an indication that other people need to be doing this as well. It shouldn't actually be possible that a 32-year-old researcher from not even a university can get 2 paper corrections issued in 2 months in something they're doing in their spare time. If that was any other field, that field would be mocked relentlessly, and rightly so. Right, so this is an indication that these pro-meat scientists of various stripes have been getting away with far too much for far too long. We have to make the people sitting down to cynically write out pro-meat science think. The scientific community is not going to stand for this. There will be pushback. I will have to change this. They can't think, I can write whatever and get away with it. We need to be making problems for these cynical, bad faith, pro-meat scientists. And that reminds me, I've got something from my friend Frederick Leroy. For those who don't know, Frederick Leroy is an infamous pro-meat scientist, and I use that term loosely, and the lead author of the Dublin Declaration, a scientific paper, again, I use the term loosely, which is written by meat industry executives to mislead policymakers into thinking that there's no need for us to reduce our meat consumption. I led a published rebuttal of this paper in Nature Food. Several others have also rebutted this paper. Notably, one paper found empirical proof that the Dublin Declaration was misleading. Since I led a rebuttal of the Dublin Declaration, I've been tagging Frederick Leroy on LinkedIn to try and get him to defend it. And he's been desperately avoiding me. Here I am posting all the meat industry connections of the Dublin Declaration authors, tagging all of them so that they can see the post and get a chance to deny or defend themselves. This is 2 months ago, none of them have done that. Here I am resharing a spooky diagram made by Frederick Leroy, showing all these scary red lines between different organisations. I at him here and say, hey, where's Bryant Research? Right, I run a private research company which is heavily aligned with a lot of the organisations on Frederick Leroy's spooky diagram here, and yet we are not mentioned here. He's deliberately left me off because he's scared to at me. I'm not joking. Meanwhile, he's crying about me at his meat industry conferences. Here I am showing up 0 hits for Bryant on the Dublin Declaration rebuttals page. They've still got nothing to say about my published rebuttal. This is a month ago. And now, well, okay, this one's just a meme. After Leroy claimed that there has been no scientific criticisms of the Dublin Declaration. These are all the various published responses. And finally, here's a picture I posted with the caption, me on stage with everyone who's willing to defend the Dublin Declaration. I'm a great LinkedIn account to follow, by the way, link me in. Well, despite my pretty consistently tagging him on LinkedIn and him having viewed my profile on several occasions, he has never once engaged with me. In fact, the host of a podcast that Leroy was on reached out to me and asked me if I would want to come on to have a debate with Leroy. I said absolutely yes, but there's no chance that this guy will talk to me. Well, he reached out to Frederick Leroy to ask him, and surprise, surprise, Leroy said that he's a bit too busy at the moment. I told this podcast host that I'll give him €100 if Frederick Leroy agrees to talk to me before the end of the year. This all got me thinking, how long has this guy actually been avoiding me for? And then I thought, wouldn't it be good if there was a website that could give me that information whenever I wanted it? That's why I'm pleased to announce the launch of my new website, www.forhowlonghasfrederickleroyavoidedchrisbryant.com. I'm not joking, this website is live now, and it's counting up the seconds since I first tagged Frederick Leroy on LinkedIn with my rebuttal of the Dublin Declaration. I want it to be perfectly clear to everybody who comes across this guy that he is completely incapable of defending his junk science, the Dublin Declaration. If this seems mean-spirited, I want you to remember this is somebody who is cynically pushing misleading pro-meat science, which has been empirically shown to be misleading, and then refusing to defend it when challenged. I'm told that this guy is taken seriously. I have no idea why that would be the case. The Dublin Declaration is a thoroughly unimpressive document, and it's no surprise to me at all that he doesn't back himself to defend it in a conversation. If you happen to see this guy tweeting any misleading pro-meat stuff, you might like to remind him of the website for howlonghasfrederickleroyavoidedchrisbryant.com. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. We're 2 for 2 so far in our war on pro-meat junk science. Since I started doing this and speaking up against pro-meat junk science, I've seen and spoken to other scientists who have been inspired to do the same, and I'm so pleased to see it. This is where the fight back begins, and it's badly needed. Meat industry interests have been getting away with far too much for far too long, and it's up to the scientific community to start holding individuals to account, forcing concessions, getting papers corrected, and insisting that the truth remains the truth. Share this video with your friends, share it with your colleagues, subscribe to the channel. This is Chris Bryant, PhD. Cheers.